I blocking
Don't worry.
this table's view? Okay, I just want to make sure I can hit my slides. As I speak, there are copies of our key statement for New Canaan on your table, and most of the information in here I've also shared verbally, but if you'd like to look up close, that is available to you there. And I just want to say thank you again so much to Mr. Simpson for inviting me today and hosting me. I am delighted to be here. And I thought that I would give you a brief background on how I got here and into this position. So it's wonderful to speak to you today about an organization of which I have been a participant who, as a high schooler, benefited significantly from its impact on my life. I'm a volunteer mentor for almost a decade in Virginia and Washington, D.C., and now the area director in New Canaan as of June. So I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. I was first invited to Young Life by a teammate on my JV lacrosse team, and I fell in love with this organization. It had a wonderful impact on me, so much so that I continued to volunteer when I went to the University of Virginia. All 4 years I was there, I volunteered at a local Charlottesville high school, Albemarle High School, if anyone is familiar with that area. And I stayed connected as a volunteer, as a young professional, doing talent consulting and working for Capital One. And into my 8 years of volunteering, the regional director for the Lighthouse region, which oversees Young Life in Rhode Island, coastal Connecticut, and Westchester County, reached out to me and asked me if I would ever consider doing this full time. And one thing led to another, and my husband and I moved up to New Canaan from Richmond, Virginia to help restart Young Life in this area. So when we talk about Young Life, I actually prefer to start by talking about teenagers and talking about teenagers in our community. I'm wondering if you all would humor me and you would share the first word that comes to mind when I say teenagers in New Canaan.
Trouble.
Trouble? Or trouble? Stress, chaotic.
Old.
What was that?
Overprogrammed.
Full.
Overprogrammed.
Overprogrammed, yes, we hear that a ton. Busy, right? Busy. Sports, athletic, absolutely. Lacrosse, football, yes, you guys are nailing it. We get a lot of, that they're overprogrammed, that they're under a significant amount of pressure, that they are kind of brought up with a very specific and somewhat narrow understanding of what gives them worth. Young Life actually conducted a study, and the findings were published this year in partnership with Pinkston Research Group on Generation Z. We surveyed and conducted focus groups with over 7,000 adolescents, ages 13 through 24, across the globe, and we asked them really who they are, how their culture is impacting them, what they care about, and what they need from us. And I'd love to share with you all some of our findings in a brief video.
Generation Z, my generation, is defined as those born between 1997 and 2012. We're between 12 and 27 years old.
Just like you, we're built for relationships. They help us figure out who we are and really what we're worth.
Young Life did a study to find out how to better invest in my generation, learning how we can thrive now and in the future, with ourselves, with friends, with adults like parents and teachers, and with God. Hi!
First off, relationships and communicating, not online, but actually in person, matter to us in a huge way. Our screens are always on. Research says that they're connecting us to more loneliness and more anxiety. We may not always say we want it, but we love face-to-face time and shared real-life experiences. Relationships matter.
Second, transitions are the most challenging times for us. Sure, we struggle during our high school years, but we need the most support when we're transitioning into those years or out of them into whatever's after high school. We need solid adult relationships to help us through times when everything feels weird and new.
Third, friends and family are who we turn to for help. We trust you. As we get older, we need you to keep being someone we can count on for advice and support. We need you to remind us how we're made and who made us so we can answer these questions.
Am I enough to be loved? To be valued? Do I have something to offer the world?
When asked to come up with what we want to be known as, the two most common words are kind and good. We believe we can make a meaningful impact on the world for future generations.
We want something to help us live a better life, and this desire only gets stronger as we get older. Over 40% of us Gen Zers are not confident that we're worthy of being loved.
And this is where Young Life comes in. For more than 80 years, Young Life leaders have been showing up in the lives of kids, building relationships of trust, and sharing the good news of Jesus. We tell kids they're enough to be loved and have something to offer the world. It takes courage to step into the life of a kid, and we invite you to do just that. To explore what it means to be a leader, or to financially and prayerfully support those who lead. Together, we can care for the next generation and introduce them to the God who loves them.
All right. So as this video shared, the findings of what we call the Relate Project were incredibly significant. In addition to some of what you heard, we found that only 31% of males and 24% of females strongly agree that they feel like they belong at school. Only 55% of teens ages 16 to 18 indicated that there are people in their life that they feel like they can talk to about things that really matter. And 41% of Gen Z is not confident that they are worthy of love. Young Life is on a mission to change that. And when we think about what our community in New Canaan specifically needs, right? This study that Young Life did is fantastic. It was done across a diverse population, both socioeconomically and geographically. But when we think about students in high-achieving communities, we actually know that they're at greater risk, right? That students in high-achieving schools exhibit higher rates of anxiety, depression, and substance abuse. Recently, the 2024 niche school rankings came out. Does anyone know what New Canaan High School ranked in Connecticut? We are number one academically. Does anyone know what the top blank that we ranked in the country for athletics? Top 100 out of many, many schools. Both much to be proud of, and also give us an indication though of the kind of pressure that students are under, right? Jennifer Wallace, who actually spoke at New Canaan Library last year, she's an award-winning journalist, writer, researcher, wrote in her book, Never Enough, kids are absorbing the idea that their worth is contingent on their performance. Their GPA, the number of social media followers they have, their college brands, not for who they are deep at their core. They feel they only matter to the adults in their life, their peers, their larger community if they are successful. So what do we do about this? How do we support students amidst a pandemic of pressure and despair? Well, leading researchers and social psychologists point to an emphasis on meaningful connections, relationships that help affirm for students that they are not alone in life, that they are seen, and that there are people who hear them and care for them. And that's what Young Life, at its essence, is all about. Young Life believes in the transformative power of relationships for students. And what we do in communities is seek to create communities and programs that foster 3 levels of relationship or categories of relationship. Right? We believe in fostering friendship, meaningful relationships with peers for other students, places where they can show up and be their authentic self with other teenagers. We believe in mentorship, fostering meaningful relationships with trusted adults in their lives, in addition to their parents who love them, their teachers who care about them, their coaches. But young life leaders get to be unique in that we don't have a relationship that's contingent on their performance, academically, on the sports field, or in any other area. We can just be for them. And finally, we believe in the transformative power of faith, right? That this pandemic of pressure and despair has a spiritual level. And we create approachable spaces where students can explore what it would look like to have a meaningful relationship with God. So with that's Young Life at a 30,000-foot view, we'll get a little bit more into the details. What is this organization, for those who are unfamiliar? Young Life is a faith-based nonprofit that brings caring, compassionate adults into the lives of middle and high schoolers to reinforce that they matter, to create approachable spaces where they can explore faith, and to model student leadership. We have been doing this for 83 years, starting in Texas in 1941 and expanding to all 50 states in the United States, as well as over 100 countries. In 2023, we had 57,000 volunteers who knew more than 2.3 million students across the world by name, or in their community as trusted adults. And then we have a staff of around 6,000 that help support that impact. So what does Young Life look like in fruition in a community? Young Life is built on relationships that manifest in what we call kind of the 4 C's, right? The first of which is connection to a Young Life leader. This is the opportunity to have compassionate, caring adults enter the lives of students, not specifically in any partnership with a specific church, but actually on their terms and in their kind of ecosystem, which typically looks like being connected in places where teenagers hang out. It looks like coaching sports. It looks like helping chaperone their clubs. It looks like being invested members of their community rather than asking them to come to our thing. We go to their thing and show up and support them where they are. Those relationships come together when we host Young Life Club, which is kind of a big umbrella gathering where we play games with students, we sing and do live music. We give them a minute to put away their phones and disconnect from the pressure that they're under, be kids for an hour. We have a Young Life leader at the end of that meeting share a brief message about hope, inviting them to consider a God who loves them and what role faith could play in their life. For students who are interested in the faith aspect of Young Life, we host small groups called campaigners, and those are spaces for them to ask their questions and to grow deeper and pursue whatever extent of faith they are interested in. And then we provide opportunities for students to go to camp and really invest in growing all 3 levels of those relationships that we talk about: friendship, mentorship, relationship with God, through adventure, fun. These are phone-free weeks or weekends. High schoolers don't argue with this on it. Actually, they love it. They can't wait to be free from this device that rules their life at home and away from the normal pressure, so that they can have deeper conversations, talk about things that really matter to them. So with that being said, Young Life is in a rebuilding season in New Canaan itself. Young Life was here previously through the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and staff transitioned to other areas, and without kind of the consistent staff presence, Young Life dissolved, for lack of better term. So my husband Andrew and I came to the area in 2023. We started partnering with a local committee of 7 families who are deeply invested in creating the opportunity of Young Life for our students. And we are going to slowly rebuild over the next 3 to 5 years. We're starting with a very modest budget for this year of around $180,000, which helps fund full-time staff, operating costs, as well as our support services, payroll, HR, that we pay into as part of our global organization. And we're very fortunate to have a committed base of local donors, people who, like Mr. Simpson, had kids who grew up participating in Young Life previously in New Canaan and are really excited to have this opportunity back. But just transparently, many more are needed. So we will be applying for a grant from the Rotary Club, but I'd also love to speak with anyone individually who's interested in learning more about how to support us in a myriad of ways. I'll pause here and I will just open up the floor to any questions that you may have. Yes.
I remember Young Life in the early 80s. I know David Rucci probably. It was big.
Yeah.
Meaning the Young Life meeting in 1983 would have been at somebody's house, and I think more than 100, maybe 150 kids. And if you didn't go, you missed out in the days before cell phones. So here's my question, and it's a difficult one. I'm also a member of a church.
Sure.
I suspected, and maybe it wasn't even just suspected, I could tell that my church was defensive about this. What is Young Life coming into the community and providing, a faith-based programming?
Yeah.
We're supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
So I wonder, do you get embraced by some churches, and do you get sort of the stiff arm from others who say, we're in that business,
Sure.
we don't need you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll tell you, I've put a high priority on connecting to our clergy community, to representatives who are here. I love, so maybe they could answer the question, but no, it's a great question and it always comes up, right? How does Young Life fit into the faith fabric of our community? What Young Life seeks to do is to partner with churches in reaching more students. So we have fabulous youth programs at tons of our churches. I personally go to the Congregational Church. YG is massive. I volunteer when I can with their program. I love it. We took 120 students to Puerto Rico on a mission trip last February with YG. But here's the thing, 120 students plugged in at Congregational, maybe 200 plugged in elsewhere. St. A's has a great program. There are over 1,200 students at New Canaan High School, right? There are upwards of 800 who aren't plugged in anywhere. Maybe don't have anyone reaching out to them, fostering conversations around faith, caring for them, knowing them by name and praying for them. So we seek to reach out to students who are disinterested and disconnected from any of our church communities. And when students show an interest in fostering faith in their life, we seek to connect them to local churches. Young Life ends for them. For some of them in high school, for some of them in college, if they go to a college that has Young Life programs. But we believe that in order to have a lifelong, vibrant faith, they're going to need to be connected to a local church, and we want to be the source of connecting them to one here. Scott.
Yeah, I took the bait. Thanks for being here, Sarah. Sarah and I are married. I'm delighted that she's here with her husband to work. And I was a recipient of the ministry of Young Life when I was in high school. So I know the program, I appreciate it. I call it, it provided a catalytic conversion for me. Because I was a member of a church, went through confirmation, but I think as all of us, if we've been a part of a faith community, it's about high school and you settle in college when you wander off, And Young Life was a fun way to provide community, deeper relationships and conversations that were offline, even in my days, that you couldn't have with people that knew you and expected you to be a certain way and had expectations of the performative stuff. I lived in a high kind of performance, high school too, and was, this, that, and the other. And Young Life provided a real safe place to have conversations and fun and to explore faith that somehow I couldn't do it in my own church. I'm still a son of the church, obviously, I'm a pastor now, but Young Life provided a great community, and I think the key for me at that point in my life was just a real freedom and fun to be myself and explore those deeper faith questions with people that I trusted. So anyway, I want to support Sarah and her work here, and we had conversations because there may be challenges along the way and how we do stuff differently in this community versus that community, and how do we try to work together? Because I think we have this verse, and Jesus said, the harvest is bountiful, but the workers are few. And so, like you said, there's plenty of kids out there that are really searching and have no faith community or no trusted adults that they can reach out to. And so if Young Life can help them, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Amen.
And seriously, I'll say this publicly too, that if we have youth in our church that somehow aren't having their needs met in our congregation, I am very glad to recommend them to be a part of Young Life. So that's my 2 cents.
Yes.
How do you handle non-Christian children?
Oh, well, we're all for them. I mean, really, Young Life is designed to be a space where students who have no religious background or little religious background or tons, but they need a different space to connect and to be themselves, to interact. So we provide very approachable and kind of introductory resources to what it could look like to have a life that's grounded on faith. And we do that in a myriad of ways. From where we host Young Life typically is hosted in a community's member's home. So those 150 kids, they're not in like a rec center. Typically they're in someone's basement, and they're just hoping that the floor holds up and that the carpet survives this meeting. But we have it in kind of those neutral spaces where kids feel like they could go, where a family member could reach out and say, oh, I know that family that's hosting that group, and I feel comfortable with my child going to their home. There are kids in New Canaan who just won't set foot in a church on their own, and they need a middle ground where they can come have some deeper life conversations and start to have interactions that give them the impression that people of faith are for them and for their flourishing before maybe they connect more formally to a church community. So we do it in where we have it. We also do it in the way that we talk about the gospel. We talk about some of the pressures and stresses in life. We talk heavily with students about identity, belonging, and value. Where do they find those things? What are they kind of hinging their identity on? What makes them feel or makes them not feel like they belong? And what would it look like to consider what God may have to say about those 3 things, about their identity, about their belonging, and about their value, in hopes that over developing an organic friendship, we can share with them that we think their value is intrinsic in who they are, because we think that they were made in the image of a God who loves them, and that nothing could ever take that away. No failure, no success could add or diminish that.
So Sarah, a young person in this community who is a person of faith, but is devout Muslim or Hindu or Jew, I mean, you talk about the Gospels.
Yeah.
Do they have a place, or do they got to go somewhere else to get the things that you offer?
Oh, we welcome them. We welcome students of all backgrounds. We won't be apologetic about talking about the impact that Jesus has had on our life. But we love when students of different faith come to Young Life. And one of the reasons why we have this kind of concentric circles, I didn't talk about these at the beginning, just in an attempt to be brief, which typically I am not. But we really look at this illustration as a helpful way to think about the impact of Young Life in a community. There will be a group of students who really connect to the faith element of Young Life, who are interested in a relationship with God and who use Young Life as a tool to deepen that. But there will also be a group of students who just appreciate and really flourish under having trusted adults in their life who care about them, irregardless of how they feel about the faith element of Young Life. That there are more adults in their life checking in on them, asking them how their day was, celebrating them.
The 1 and 2.
Exactly, 1 and 2, the circle gets bigger as far as the impact, the students who will be impacted positively by that. And even more students will be impacted positively by the opportunity to go to a Young Life Club, to take an hour out of their week where they don't have to think about their Spanish test or their game in the next day, where they get to cover somebody's face in whipped cream and throw cheese puffs at them and just laugh and be kids for an hour and escape the pressure and the demands that are put on them elsewhere. So we hope that there are students who just love to unplug, who love to have an adult in their life who know their name, even if they don't ever connect to the message that we're sharing about Jesus. We hope that they do, but if they don't, we love them all the same, and they're welcome all the same.
What's your experience in helping kids find new friends and make new friends? A lot of kids will say, I don't have any friends, or they have friends and other kids won't talk to them, so they're feeling cut off. And how do you deal with that? Because if the kid goes to anything and comes back with a new friend, that's a home run.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree. Friendships in high school are tumultuous. I'm sure you all remember. That has not changed if you're curious. I would say what is one of the wonderful things that we hear from students all the time is that spaces like Young Life create an intersection between friend groups in the high school. They actually open up students to other students who they may not have classes with, may not be on their sports teams or in their direct clubs. So we give them an opportunity to create inter-class and inter-clique friendships, right? This is a space where freshmen and seniors are like all mixed together, sophomores and juniors. So they start to build community with students who otherwise they may not have known or interacted with. And we find that the intersection that Young Life creates in not being based on a specific level of academic or sports achievement helps give students access to different and deeper friendships. Yes.
More hard questions.
Yes. Bring them on.
So it occurs to me that with this great baseline of affecting 2.3 million kids in communities in every one of the 50 states and 100 countries around the world, that we must have really good data for your donors, where you say, in those communities where Young Life exists and is thriving, we see a result of X, less suicide, less stress, happier kids, and this is how we measure it. I mean, can you tell us how you speak to the people who are giving grants and giving money, like the Community Foundation, on how you measure success and how does Young Life help those communities where you exist?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're in that space where we have less of a direct cause and effect to measure. Young Life is not a mental health resource. Does that mean it doesn't have a tremendous positive effect to have communities that are safe and welcoming and inclusive? We believe it does, and there is lots of testimony to point to the fact that it has. But we're still in a process, really, as an organization, of understanding and determining what data matters the most to us, I'll say. And the Relate project that I referenced, I'd love for you all to look into it. It is available for free. You can just Google, Relate Young Life project and download it. And we're looking at kind of the baseline of where this generation is starting, so that we can do more studies in the future on the impact, hopefully, that we're having. Similar to what we're doing in New Canaan, if you don't have a baseline of kind of what is happening with kids, it becomes very hard then to measure your impact. I'll say that the statistic, instead of necessarily an impact that we're seeing in the mental health of students, which is hard to capture in a number of ways, the metric that Young Life really grounds to is kids known by name. And we believe that our impact is kind of best measured by the amount of students that we are building authentic relationships of care and support with. So that is the number that every area is responsible for reporting out, and that we collect heavily as a faith community. Yeah, Scott.
Just back on that. Robert Putnam has done a lot of work. He's a Harvard sociologist. He did the Bowling Alone in America book 20 years ago. He's come out with some articles. His data just continues to say, if you're not joining a club of some kind, it's killing our country, literally. And there's a new movie. I'm trying to get Cinelab, and we're working on getting this movie. It's called Join or Die, which is a little out in your face. But the sociological studies are very clear that people who join clubs like Rotarians tend to be happier, healthier mentally, behavioral health, wellness, and we tend to be on the positive end of the spectrum. And people who are increasingly isolated, lonely, obviously that's going to the other end, and is a risk for our society. That's where the young male white guys with guns, are doing crazy stuff and really killing people. And so, anyway, it's not about Young Life per se, but
it is about connection.
the sociological studies are very clear. So.
Yeah, and I'll just point you to the work of Lisa Miller. She is an amazing researcher and neuroscientist in Fairfield County who's doing tremendous studies on the positive effects of spirituality on students, young kids through adolescence. She wrote The Awakened Brain, and she is publishing new findings that show that having a spiritual kind of place in your life, having a connection to a church or a spiritual community of any way is showing to be 80% preventative against later long-term episodes of depression and substance abuse in teenagers' life. So there isn't any other thing that we can point to and say is 80% preventative of later suffering on those terms. There's no hockey league there's no pill that is. If there was, we'd all be getting it, right? None of our vaccines.
Actually, I'm sorry. Andrew Gerber is one of our members, and he has said in public meetings that he's speaking from the mental health profession, school, saying we now medicate for what used to be taken care of in relationships and faith communities.
Yeah.
That really got to me. And convicting, because apparently we're not doing our jobs. So,
Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.